Hey, what's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and it's time for me to rank the discography of progressive deathcore metalcore band Within the Ruins. And hey, if you'd like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alright, let's start off with 2009's Creature, starting from the very beginning here. I don't have as much to say about these beginning albums. I think they're solid. I know that there are some people who consider this still kind of like their favorites. They have a much rawer sound. The production is kind of muddy, and for me, as somebody who came in around Elite after they had kind of really glossed things up and made it really sharp and kind of honed their skills, I just don't like them as much. They're not as repeatedly enjoyable to listen to. So I'm going to put kind of both of those at C, and so that also includes 2010's Invade. I put them at about the same level. They're of the same quality. Songwriting is already pretty solid. Guitar work was impressive from the very beginning, but again, the production really makes these kind of detract for me, and compared to the albums to come, they just can't stack up. That's just my thinking, but you can all let me know down in the comments if you disagree, as always. But I really want to get into the meat of it. For me is where I kicked things off with the band originally, which was with 2013's Elite. This album is so good, and I remember just being so struck listening to these guitar lines. Like, at the time, I think still relatively new to Gent, and so hearing these guitars in this particular style was just mind-blowing for me. I was already into, like, Periphery, but just the speed and the ferocity of this was just on a completely different level. So, I mean, you've got so many amazing songs, like Solace, Feeding Frenzy. I love this intro. It's just music that I always say it makes your neck like snap around. You don't really like bang your head. You like literally like snap your freaking head off your shoulders listening to some of this stuff. These guitar lines, they're just insane. And for me, the fact that they've been so consistent with it over the years is really impressive. You got New Holy War. I love this intro too. It's like a Nintendo game. Kicking off into this heavier stuff. So many amazing moments, so many great songs on here that just hooked me from the very beginning. And like, I just happened upon this album. I was just like going through the mall, and a store had the little sampler thing up where you could like listen to sort of the store recommendations or the new releases. And on a whim, I just saw this cover and I was like, whoa, that looks interesting. And I gave it a listen and never turned back. Like, I've bought every album since. They're all on my shelf. Looking forward to picking up the new one. But yeah, Elite, really good. Absolute Hell is another great song. That drum roll at the beginning is great. Awesome stuff. So yeah, that's Elite, and I really do enjoy this album, but even as much as I enjoy it, there are better albums, I would say, in their discography. But I gotta at least put it at A tier. And so I'm gonna jump forward now to 2014 with Phenomena. Now this album, on so many levels, is just so pleasing to me. Like, first of all, they released this single, and this opening is just one of my favorite song openings and album openings of all time. I love how it's this like dialogue between Professor X and Magneto about the humans. Lucian, we are gods! Kicks into that guitar riff. Man, what an amazing opener. And so the songwriting is just so on point. Once more, the guitars are impressive, but you've got this additional layer too that appealed to me in terms of all of these songs are based on comic book characters. So there's just this, like, I'm such a nerd for that stuff too, and superhero stuff and everything. And so figuring out like which character is each one talking about and delving into that and the lyrics, like, it just gave an extra layer to enjoyment. But even without that, like, you listen to those riffs and it's just so good. I believe Calling Card is Joker. Another great intro song on this one. Again, you'll just snap your neck right off your shoulders with this one. Amazing hooks. Ronin's really good. Kind of a slower intro on this one, which is really cool. much more like Meshuggah-y vibe to this one. I'm pretty sure this one's about Wolverine, if I recall. I've kind of since forgot some of these. And then you've even got the instrumental tracks like Enigma, which I believe is the Riddler. And I started to take notice too. I was like, dang, this band is just as good even if they don't have vocals. And then of course they've got this running theme of the Ataxia instrumental that they do they've done on the past 5 albums, including the new one. And they're all just numbered. They're all equally impressive. Like they're not lesser tracks. Like they're just as enjoyable. Sentinel's great. One of my other favorites, Gangster and Be Broken. I've used that in a number of memes now too, but just another amazing track intro. But yeah, that's the thing about these guys is like not only are they superbly technical, but they're also like they mix it with that sense of groove and just infectiousness and catchiness, and they've got those standout moments that, as I said in my review of the new album, like I can't get into some technical deathcore bands like I mentioned Rings of Saturn because it's just like so dense and all the songs start to be overwhelming and kind of sound the same to me. Whereas with this, like the technicality is perfectly balanced with that sense of just like catchy songwriting. And for that reason, this is an S-tier album for me. There's so many of those standout moments that just stick with you and that I love to quote and that just pop into my head randomly. And there's something special about that. But let's move on to Halfway Human, which was 2017. And I was really hyped for this album. It had been a while, been like 3 years since Phenomena, and I was wondering when they were going to put something else out. And I was not disappointed. I had kind of mixed reactions to the initial singles because this does mark a little bit of a shift for the band stylistically in that they're incorporating a lot more kind of clean vocals into the sound. So I think the first single was Beautiful Agony. And again, I was kind of on the fence about it. Like, I love the heaviness of it and the gentiness. It's all still there. But like the video and some of the lyrics, I do love this part. But yeah, the cleans kicked in and I was like, I'm not really sure about this. It's grown on me over time, but I still do consider it to be kind of like one of the weaker elements of their sound that they haven't like truly figured out yet. I'm not against them having clean vocals. I think that's cool. It's just they could roll it in better, I think, overall. But still, this song grew on me. It just grew and grew and grew, and honestly, the whole album did. This part, fresh by the veil. That whole run with the guitar and the way the vocals are implemented, again, great songwriting. And the more I listened to this album, the more every song started to stand out again. Like, there's so many great, like, they're differentiated really well. They don't sound the same. They all have that same through line of stylistically kind of Joe's guitar work. But they each have their own kind of textures and styles. Incomplete Harmony's great. Shapeshifters, another solid opener. Just another kind of Meshuggah-y guitar part in the intro there. So they're just they're just taking what was already good about the previous album and then just adding like an extra layer of kind of like radio friendly quality to it without losing anything in the process. Like it kind of reminds me of the transition that Born of Osiris has kind of been going through. And say about that what you will, but I feel like both of these bands have done a good job of kind of fusing the two styles without going like Bring Me the Horizon, so to speak, and kind of just becoming a complete radio, like more rock oriented band. They're still very much like metal bands. Objective Reality this is one of the singing moments I really do like. This whole opening, I think this works really well. I'd like to hear more of this and then transitioning into the heavy stuff again. Yeah, like every song, pretty much every song in this album has something really solid. This riff, so many classic moments. Ivory Tower. You can't not love it. Like, you can't. You just can't. Treadstone's really good, too. And so, honestly, like, I've been on the fence about this one still for a little while. But, honestly, I kind of want to put it at S tier, just if we're considering how many, like, basically singles there are on the album. Like almost every song is a single on here, and in that way it's like just as strong as Phenomena. There are more like detracting points though than I have with Phenomena, I say, but I don't know. It's a balance. So it's somewhere between A and S. I would say overall, Phenomena I like the most, and this is just a close second to it. But yeah, and then Elite. But let's move on to the last album, their newest album, anyways, at the time of recording this, Black Heart, coming out this year in 2020. And it's a really solid album. First album to feature Steve on vocals. Tim is out of the band now. And Steve's good though. Like that was one of my wonderings is like, how were they going to do with a new vocalist? But luckily, like I said in my full review, which I definitely encourage you to check out to get much more in-depth thoughts on this album, he stepped in, and it almost doesn't really matter because it's a guitar-driven band. Like, this is Joe's band, first and foremost. Like, he's a founding member, and he is what drives the sound. Like, if you kind of lose Joe, then the band's over. But short of that, yeah, Deliverance, amazing lead single. Like, this is what sold me on, like, okay, Steve's great, and they're gonna kill it with this album. I would say that Deliverance is one of the best songs that they've written to date. Definitely cracking at least the top 10. And it's very dynamic, lots of great moments from these faster parts and just all these cool little noodly riffs that they throw in, the little solo, and then the final like breakdown is just so heavy. I closed my full review with that one. Black Heart, the title track, really solid. Got lots of great like tapping riffs on this one. But this is another one again where, so the singing, I still have a problem with it on this album, and I think it's a little worse than it was on the previous album, actually. Not necessarily Steve's fault, it's not like the tone of his voice or anything, it's just how it's written into the music. Just still, I feel like, tends to detract more than add from a lot of these songs. So, still some room to touch that up. Open Wounds is really good. Nice, like, atmosphere to some of these, too. Like, very kind of, like, there's a layer of emotion to some of these, too. Steve throws in some good dynamics with his vocals, too, that we didn't always see with Tim. Some really good blacks on this album, too. 86th is another great instrumental track. Of course, they've got another edition of Ataxia. Devil in Me, I'm not as into. This is one of the weaker tracks for me. I find the lyrics to be a little bit cliche and edgy. But I do like Hollow. It's another one of my personal favorites. It even has a little rendition of kind of like the Tetris theme. Where is it? If I can find it. Yeah. Reckless is also one of the kind of weaker tracks, I would say. It's a little bit slower. But even some of the better tracks, like Outsider is another one that could be one of my favorite tracks, but then the clean vocals come in, and it's another situation where they kind of pull it. Like, I love this riff. It's so heavy. But then we get the singing part, and it just really slows everything down, and just, I don't know, it's just not that great. Like, the writing needs to be a little bit better for those parts. But I could go on and on. Again, you can check out my full review to hear more of my thoughts on this album. But overall, as you can see, like, it's really solid. It's up there, but it's not as solid as these. And that was kind of the way I put it, is that it's not that it's bad in any way. In fact, it's a really good album. I said that it's one of my favorite deathcore albums of the year. So in the realm of what's come out in 2020, it's really good. But within the discography of Within the Ruins, it just has such a high bar to hit, and it just doesn't quite get there. So I'm going to put it at a B, and I feel pretty good about that. So those are the 6 full-length albums of Within the Ruins and my thoughts on them. And now, of course, as always, I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. What are your favorite albums? How would you rank them? But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.